Assalamu Alaykum. Inshallah, today we're gonna read from Surah 37, exactly from verse 50, inshallah. The dwellers of heaven visit the dwellers of hell. They will come to each other and confer with one another. One of them will say, I used to have a friend. He used to mock. Do you believe all this? After we die and turn into dust and bones, do we get called to account? Let me start saying the wonderful description that God gave us in previous verses, as we saw in last study, about paradise and how much joy and happiness waits the believers in heaven. God here gives us in these verses um, conversation between two dwellers of heaven and talking to each other. So, and it seems like they are talking about their life here on earth before going to heaven, of course. And this indicates to me that God will preserve our memories of our life here on earth, which is not like, the first experience, the first state. Of course, we came here in this life and we don't have any idea about what's happening before. It's a plan of God. So, anyways, so this person, the dweller of heaven, said that he used to have a friend who is, clearly in this verse, disbeliever. He disbelieved in the day of resurrection, and he believed that people will not be accountable and there is no life after that. Just we live just this life and that's it. So he was a disbeliever, of course, and plus of that, he was mocking, which is, he was mocking the believer of his friend, which is more worse, not just disbeliever. Should I repeat or continue?
It's up to you. I mean, wherever you want to.
Okay, so I can repeat, inshallah.
Oh,
Okay. Mm, So we read from, inshallah, verse 50. They will come to each other and confer with one another. One of them will say, I used to have a friend. He used to mock. Do you believe all this? After we die and turn into dust and bones, do we get called to account? So, as I said, after the wonderful description that God gave us in previous verses about the paradise and how much joy and happiness waits the believers in heaven, He gave us, and this verse is a conversation between two dwellers of heaven talking to each other, and they are talking, about their life here on earth before going to heaven. So I said that this indicates that God will preserve our memories of our life here on earth. So, so this person, the dweller of heaven, said that he used to have a friend, and this friend was disbeliever, clearly from the verse, and he disbelieved of the day of resurrection, and he believed that people will not be accountable and there is no life after that, and just live this life and that's it. There's nothing else after. Sorry, can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you. We just one person was on mute, so we just muted. Yes.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So this person was, I said that this person was disbeliever, and he didn't believe in the day of resurrection. No, and that people will not be accountable, and and plus of that, he was mocking, yeah, which is most worse. He's not just disbeliever; he mock the believer his friend. So this dweller of hell of heaven, uh, it's like he was curious. I said that he is like he's it's like he was curious to know what happened to that friend now, you know, and maybe he wished to meet him again and see his reaction now in the hereafter, after he was denying in the past all of that, which is there is no hereafter, no judgment, no account, and all of that. It's like he wished to meet him again and see his reaction. So this person gets his wish immediately, subhanallah, as we will see in the next verse. He get his wish, and as we know, in paradise the believers get anything they wish. From 25:16, God says they get anything they wish therein forever. This is your Lord irrevocable, Lord's irrevocable promise. So we will see that in the next verse 54. God says, He will say, just take a look. When he looks, he will see his friend in the heart of hell. Footnote says, people who make it to heaven will be able to visit their relatives and friends in hell without adverse consequences. In the hereafter, anyone can move downward but not upward beyond a certain limit. The limit is decided by one's degree of growth and development. See appendix number 5. 56. He will go to him and say, by God, you almost ruined me. If it were not for my Lord's blessing, I would have been with you now. Mhm. So as we can see here from those verses, we can realize that the person is he expressed, the dangerous situation in which he was in his life on earth. Well, it was very dangerous situation to have a friend like that, disbeliever, and he can, invite him to hell, and he can end up with him now. So it's a dangerous situation for us too, if we have a friend who mock and ridicule our belief in God alone and trying to argue with falsehood to defeat the truth. You know, this way, this kind of friend are inviting us to hell. So if we accept, and we can end up like them in a miserable and eternal destiny. So for that reason, God commands the believers to not befriend the disbelievers, and especially those who mock and ridicule the religion. As we see that in many verses in Quran, and I pick an example in Surah 55, 57, verse 4. God says, "O you who believe, do not befriend those among the recipients of previous scripture who mock and ridicule your religion, nor should you befriend the disbelievers. You should reverence God if you are really believers." This is a clear verse, Masha Allah, to be careful and to choose our friend carefully. That's why we need to choose our friend carefully, because in the day of resurrection, friends, they cannot help one another, or they will instead disown one another, if they are not believers, of course. So also for people who preserve, this kind of friendship in this life due to social pressure, need to be careful too. And you know, as we see in 29:25, social pressure, a profound disaster. God says, He said, "You worship beside God powerless idols due to peer pressure just to preserve some friendship among you in this worldly life. But then, on the day of resurrection, you will disown one another and curse one another. Your destiny is hell, wherein you cannot help one another." This is another verse which is very clear, to be careful and to choose our friend carefully. Okay, I will continue reading. 58. Do you still believe that we die only the first death and we never receive any requital? This is a serious question. Okay. Um. Uh. As we see in these verses, uh, his friend believed that after the first death, we'll live only this life. You know, this is his belief, that we just live this life, and after that there is no resurrection, no hereafter, no heaven, no hell. Nobody will be accountable, and which is completely wrong. Mm. And as we know from the Quran, exactly verse 228, the righteous experience only the first death following our origin sin, and unrighteous person go through two deaths, not just one. And at the time of death, the disbelievers know their miserable fate. Then they suffer a continuous nightmare that lasts until hell is created. This is clear. This is what we have in Quran, proven message to us. But his friend, he was denying that, and he disbelieved on that. He think that just we will live just one life and nothing else after. So I will continue. 60. Such is the greatest triumph. This is what every worker should work for. And God described here that this redemption as a greatest triumph. So we see that too in uh, 185. God says, "Every person tastes that, then you receive your recompense on the day of resurrection. Whoever misses hell barely and makes it to paradise has attained a great triumph. The life of this world, is no more than an illusion." So it's clear, that just uh, to be saved from a very miserable destiny like hell, eternal, not just for just period of time. No, it's eternal, misery. It's a real triumph for us. It was to work, hard for that we may attain salvation, of course. As we see in another verses, 94, we created the human being to work hard to redeem himself. Yeah. Okay, so after this conversation and the previous verses, God will give us more details about how miserable and how terrible uh, hell is, in the next verses. We can, yeah, inshallah, we read the verses 62. Is this a better destiny or the tree of bitterness? We have rendered it a punishment for the transgressors. It is a tree that grows in the heart of hell. Its flowers look like the devil's heads. They will eat from it until their bellies are filled up. Then they will top it with hellish drink. Then they will return to hell. So, as we see in these verses, God, you know, highlights a part of hell, you know, which is the tree of bitterness, and He gives details of this miserable tree. Um, he just give this example to inform us, you know, the fact of how terrible uh, is hell, you know. And so we have no excuses anymore. We should make the right choice. It is, like God says, is this a better destiny or the tree of bitterness? Yeah, this is a serious question. So sure, the better destiny is the greatest triumph. The choice of redemption, to be saved from hell. This is what every worker should work for. Inshallah. Okay, we continue reading. 69. They followed their parents blindly. They found their parents astray, and they blindly followed in their footsteps. We see here that after talking about hell and how terrible it is, God gives us one of human tragedy, that caused most of people to be in hell, which is following parents blindly. This is a very famous tragedy, of course. Uh, we know that every generation find their parents stray by practicing idol worship in the name of religion or tradition or anything else, and they follow the without thinking or using their mind to discover that they were wrong and correct it. No, instead of that, they accept it blindly, and um, in addition of that, they pass this and the idol worship to the next generation. It's a continue. It's continue, with time. So we will see that in next verse 71. Okay, we continue inshallah. 71. Most of the previous generations have strayed in the same manner. We have sent to them warners, not the consequences for those who have been warned. Sorry, can you mute?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So I said that despite of this tragedy experienced by every generation, God didn't leave it like this. Mm. So from His mercy, He sent to them a warners, and this is a system of God of every community until the end of the world. As we see in 35:24, God says every community must receive a warner. So every community must receive a warner. It's a God system for every generation, every time. So thus the people will have no excuse when they face God. This is the reason. And the warning are always about worshiping God alone, as we see in an example. I will give you an example from 46:21. God says, numerous warnings were also delivered before him and after him. You should not worship except God. I fear for you the retribution of a great day. Yeah. And of course, the warning can never help people who decide to disregard it. And because of that, people get the consequences of their heedlessness here in this life before the day of judgment. It's a God system. In 54:21, God says, "How terrible was my retribution after the warnings." Sorry. So it will always be the system. It's God's system. God is never unjust towards the people. 35:80. The only people to hear your warnings are those who reverence their Lord even when alone in their privacy and observe the contact prayer salat. Whoever purifies his soul does so far for his own good. Yeah. Verse 74 now. Only God's servants who are absolutely devoted to Him alone are saved. Yeah, this verse reminds me of what Noah said to his son in 1143. He said, "Nothing can protect anyone today from God's judgment. Only those worthy of His mercy will be saved." So, from these verses, it will be always the same system to save the believers. It's a promise of God. It can not be changed. Subhanallah. And we see that in 10 103. God says, "It is our immutable law that we save the believers." So it's a system, God's system for every time, inshallah, to save the believers, the sincere believers. Inshallah. I will continue reading, inshallah. 75. Thus Noah called upon us, and we were the best responders. We saved him and his family from the great disaster. We made his companions the survivors, and we preserved, and we preserve his history for subsequent generations. Peace be upon Noah among the people. With us were the righteous. He's one of our believing servants. We drowned all the others. So, um, as we saw in the previous verses, God talks about one of the terrible tragedy that cause most of people end up in hell, by following parents blindly. And in addition, he talks about his system of sending warnings and the consequences of disregarding the warnings and the immutable law for saving the believers. Now, in these verses, God, most wise, give us an example of a warner from the past, which is Noah. So Noah, as we all know, he's a messenger, a warner to his community, and we see that in clearly in 11:25. God says, "We sent Noah to his people, saying, I come to you as a clear warner." Yeah, and there is another verse, uh, more detailed, 7:59. God says, "We sent Noah to his people, saying, O my people, worship God. You have no other God beside him. I fear for you the retribution of an awesome day." So we see from that Noah was a messenger, a warner to his community. You know, he invite his people to worship God alone and disregard the idol worship. And he warned them about a retribution from God coming. Yeah. So, but what happened? You know, they disregard the warnings. You know, his people disbelieved in him, and consequently they were drowned. So they get the same fate for every community who disregards this warning, the warning of God, of course. So God saved him and his family because it's God's law that he saved the believers. So this God system will be always the same for the past, for the present and the future too. It's for every time, everywhere. You know, and the most merciful preserved. He said that he preserved his history for subsequent generation. So it's for us too. It's a warning for us too, for the next generation, for us. And we know that Quran that we have, Masha Allah, it's full of warning. So in order to learn and to save our soul, from terrible destiny, it's a blessing from God to give this warning to us, in order to save our soul from such terrible destiny. And I like to end by some verses. 58:15. God says, "We have set it up as a lesson. Does any of you wish to learn? How terrible was my retribution after warnings. We made the Quran easy to learn. Does any of you wish to learn?" Okay, inshallah, I will end here and thank you for listening. And sorry for
No problem.
the problem, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Huda,
you.
mashallah, for the
Oh,
study.
Thank you.
Praise
Thank
God.
you. Very good.
mashallah. Welcome, inshallah.
Yeah, mashallah. So, we can really see from the history of Noah and all the other messengers that, it's God's immutable law that he always saves the believers. So we know for a fact as from the Quran that the believers will not have the same end as the disbelievers, right? So the believers are not, in other words, going to be annihilated. Now we know, as we know, that in our times, God's not going to most likely annihilate an entire community because there are people among them that do not deserve it. And there could be believers among them too. So God picks and chooses, specific people to annihilate at a specific time. And he has, and that's why we have diseases like AIDS and cancer and whatnot, you know. So since it's God's system and his law that he always saves the believers, we cannot say that the believers will go through these things, because it is God's law that he will not, annihilate the believers, you know. I mean, that's definitely one thing I see from these verses. And another thing I see is that, I mean, Noah lived among his people for such a long time and preached to them, and it seemed that the more he preached to them, I mean, the worse their reactions were, and they were, their aversion was immense, and they, just completely disregarded him or ignored him or mocked him. They mocked him and ridiculed him when he was building the ark, I mean, the ship. And basically, we see the same thing the same thing with the disbelievers now who mock and ridicule the believers and the messengers, and in this case, messenger of the covenant. Uh, in fact, the messenger of the covenant also published another newsletter. Um, I believe it was one of the later ones. I don't remember which one it was exactly. But I will probably read that in a bit, God willing, when I have it in front of me. But he sort of compared, you know, his lifetime to that of Noah as well. And we know for Noah specifically, you know, his wife and his son even did not believe, and he could not save them, and they were annihilated. And so, you know, we should learn from that as a community of people who are following him as a messenger, because you know, if he couldn't save his own wife and child, his own son, uh, who were with him, right? These people were present with him. So what makes you know, people think that there are people that were present around the messenger of the covenant are any better than you know, any of the rest of us, in the sense that, you know, they are guaranteed heaven in any way just because they were with the messenger. And but you know, it's just, or people who are related to him, you know, like there are people that are related to the messenger, uh, or people that are close to him, you know. I mean, people tend to think that because they're related, they must be like the best believers, you know, but we know that's not the case. And everybody, it doesn't matter whether you live with the messenger or not, or whether you're related to the messenger. You know, what matters is your heart, and your guidance, you know, where your faith is. You know, God is going to guide you in accordance with it. And you know, if you choose to be with Satan, you know, you could be the direct family member of the messenger and still be, you know, God's enemy. And we see that from time to time in the Quran. So I wanted to add.
Masha. What was the question about the trees of bitterness, or then the plural form?
I think that was just a correction.
Oh, okay. It's a single tree, right? One.
I think Robert has a
Yeah.
question. He's waving his hand, Salman.
Oh, okay. Okay, Robert. Yes. You have to turn on your mic. I think your mic is on mute. Yeah, you touch your screen and click, then mic icon appears and you click on it and your mic will come back.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I wanted to say is that there are trees of bitterness. It's plural, and that is found in Quran, Surah 6:52. So I had that comment. I also had this comment about Job. You know, it seems that Job's particular test in life was to be tested in sickness. And I'm thinking if a believer does get sick, we need to follow the example of Job and trust in God, even though it might be, you know, we're in hospital or something like that. I also want to comment on Noah. You know, they ridiculed him badly. I mean, really badly. And I do see the connections to the messenger of the covenant because they treated him terrible too. Remember one time he went into a radio program and was telling these people about proof in the existence of God, tangible proof in the form of the numerical miracle. And the response back from the radio announcer was, put that in your pipe and smoke it. I mean, they ridiculed him at the very end of it. I mean, here he has concrete, tangible proof of the existence of God, and you know, and they ridiculed him. But it seems that, yeah, the expectation is if you're going to be a messenger slash warner, then your expectation is going to be that you're going to be ridiculed, rejected, treated terribly. That seems to be the example that I see all throughout the Quran. It's a sad thing, but that's all that I have to say. And I think the study was really good. I really appreciated it. And I'll turn off my mic now, let other people comment. Thank you.
I have a comment. So, 1 minute. God tells us in so many verses, yes, throughout the Quran, Robert, what you're saying is that is true. That every time God sent a messenger, people didn't like it, their ego caused to be arrogant, and people had hard time letting go of what they inherited from their parents. They were following it blindly, so they cannot um, receive. It's the truth which is always ridiculed because it looks and sounds very strange to them, and it doesn't suit their lifestyle, which they have developed um, all along this time. I'm going to read verse 87 from Surah 2. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We gave Moses the scripture, and subsequent to him, we sent other messengers, and we gave Jesus, son of Mary, profound miracles and supported him with the Holy Spirit. Is it not a fact that every time a messenger went to you with anything you disliked, your ego caused you to be arrogant? Some of them you rejected, and some of them you killed. So they don't even hesitate to kill them because they don't like what they're saying. That is the case even now. If you go to one of the traditional Muslims country and talk about Messenger of the Covenant and worshiping God alone, chances are you won't survive. You know, people are ready to kill. That's it for now.
Mhm. Well, for most countries, it's certain that you won't survive. There's not a
Yes,
chance. So
there's
I'll
no
win.
chance. Yeah. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to say about the trees. In some place in that one verse, it's plural, and then other verses where it just mentions tree of bitterness, like it's singular. But yeah, I agree about the tree. And yeah, I mean, it's the same for us exactly as what Nugget said. What I wanted to say was that, I mean, when we go and present the message to someone too, I mean, you can see that people ridicule you, and if they're, probably not very confrontational, they might not ridicule you, but you can see it on their faces or in their eyes or in their expressions that they like, the moment you mention God, a lot of people, you just see that they will ridicule you, or like, oh well, I mean, when I say God willing, people start laughing. It's like uh, I don't know what it is, but really, it always turns into a joke, when you say God willing, like to these disbelievers. But yeah, I mean, really, these are all lessons for us to learn from. And this thing that Masha Allah you mentioned about choosing our friends carefully is also very, very important. And I think people should take it very, very seriously. A lot of times, people sort of uh, don't pay attention, or they don't really value what God is saying here, because you know I don't know, it's because people want to be looked upon as more benevolent and nice and kind, and they want to extend their friendship to as many people as they can and be popular, or be liked, and they tend to disregard God's commandments. And we see that that this sort of behavior actually, the consequences for this type of behavior is actually spelled out in the Quran. The consequences are grave, because it says it leads to exile from God, you know. So when you're exiled from God, I mean, that means that you do not receive any guidance, you know, you're left on your own, and you're really just you could be claimed by Satan, obviously, for that behavior. And when that happens, I mean, you know, you could be like this person, you know, who says in the hereafter that I wish I did not take this person as a friend, you know. He led me away from the message after it came to me. Uh, so you know, there will be many people in the on the day of resurrection that will be you know, on the straight path, but then you know they will slip up and you know, make friends with the with hypocrites or someone like that, and then you know these people will drag them on their path along with them. And I mean, we know that's a fact in general, you know. And, you know, that's why there's a saying, you know, a man is known by the company that he keeps, and the company really matters. You know, that's why we are forced to be with the believers, because the more we are around other believers, you know, the more we will be like them, and we'll be encouraged in this in the same path. And you know, if you spend some time with the disbelievers, you know, I mean, it's kind of a system that God has in place, you know, that they will divert you from the path. You know, I mean, now if you spend 10 minutes, you know, listening to disbelievers or looking at their lives, you see they have different goals. And you when you see that, you know, you see them running after different things in life. I mean, it's only natural that, you know, you with time, you know, you'll start to become like them too. I mean, so you know, it's not a matter of, you know, I'm very strong or anything like that. You know, it's God's system. You know, it's like you put your finger in the fire, it's gonna burn. You know, it doesn't matter how strong you are, it is gonna burn. And sort of, so it's the same thing. It's sort of like God's system, you know. So that's why, for our own good, I mean, God has told us that, you know, we don't befriend those people. One, we definitely don't befriend those people who fight us because of religion or ridicule our religion. And also, when it comes to fighting, I mean, it's not necessarily that they're not, that if they're not fighting you, but they're fighting all the other believers, that you can befriend them. And you say, well, this person's not fighting me, so I'm going to be his friend. Well, he's fighting God, and he's fighting the truth. So you definitely don't want to befriend such a person, you know, who's doing that. But other people who are, let's say, you know, disbelievers in general, but they haven't heard the message, for example, or they're respectful of your beliefs and your religion, you know, they are, and they don't fight or mock you because of religion. At that point, I mean, they are potential believers, you know. So we have to, we can befriend those people, because by befriending them, you know, I mean, befriending them in a way like, you know, they can see your lifestyle and your personality and your values. So, you know, and you could invite them to the message that way. You know, once you invite them, and you know, you don't see any positive reaction from them, I mean, you don't need to, you know, continue to befriend them, but you can still look at them as potential believers until, you know, they start to fight you or become hostile towards you, or you know, show their stance as, no, I'm not going to change, this is my way, or don't talk to me about it, or something like that. You know, then you're kind of like, okay, well, you know, this person has sort of chosen a side, you know, so then you should probably stay away from them. um, and definitely there are people that are openly fighting the believers, and there are people that will not continue to sever their not will not sever their relations with them, because they will say that, well, these people pray like me, and they believe like me in the same prayers, and they pray in the same direction. I mean, I've heard a lot of nonsense, to be very blunt, you know. So and then they'll continue to befriend them, and then you know, they will, that's why we see that people like that will never attain like certainty and a strong faith. You know, I mean, we have to be mindful about all of God's commandments, and this is an important commandment of God, just like any other commandment. So you know, it's not about unity in the sense of, you know, we're not responsible to, like, we're not responsible to, get as many people as possible in our group. That's not the goal. I mean, your number one goal is to save your soul. Is I mean, if you're going to start befriending these people and they're going to drag you to hell, I mean, you can be 20 million people and you'll be in hell. So what's the point? I mean, it's better to be in a group of even one or 10 or whatever, but you want to save yourself. That's your goal. And our goal is to save ourselves. Our goal is not to unite the whole world into submission. I mean, of course, you want to present submission to as many people as possible and invite them to the path. But it's not our responsibility to maintain a club of believers where we're all like, smiling and happy and holding hands together. It would be nice if that was possible, but of course we know that the majority of people are going to disbelieve. So we have to do what's best for our souls at that point. And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. I gotta go and delete all my Facebook friends. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Has a
How many
long
Facebook
list
friends?
around.
But there
Facebook
is
friends.
also
Yeah. Facebook.
criteria of
Yeah.
who you can friend who do not fight you because of religion or
Yeah.
mock your religion.
Yeah.
Um, God says you can befriend them.
Mm.
There's
Yeah.
so we cannot just take one verse and then, but in entire like once what we cannot befriend is hypocrites who get exposed. Those who constantly fight you because of religion and say bad things about God, and those who are just respectful to who you are, because even God says, for example, we give message to someone and they reject it, or um, we can end it at to you is your religion and to me is mine, but that does not apply to hypocrites though, because basically apparently they're practicing the religion what you have, so that doesn't apply on that. So we have to be, God says you need to be harsh and stern with them, meaning you do not lose your stance and you cannot be nice towards them. So there's like different criteria for different kind of disbelievers, and who are, obviously you won't be very close friend to them, but you don't have to be harsh towards them either, who are not fighting you because of the religion.
Yeah. I wanted to say, Adam, about Facebook, what I wanted to say was, people on Facebook are called friends, but just because you befriend someone on Facebook doesn't mean this person actually became your friend now, right? I mean, just because they call it a friend doesn't mean this person's not your friend. Like, you have followers on Instagram, for example. That doesn't mean all those followers. Like, someone could have 1 million followers. You can't say he has 1 million friends, because you might not even know. There are people on your list you don't even know. Like, someone comes up to me and they say, "Oh, I'm such and such. I'm your friend on Facebook." I might not even know this person's my quote unquote friend on Facebook, because there's so many now. I mean, like, many people don't have any friends actually, and you look at their Facebook and they have many friends. They have like 1,000 friends, but they don't really have a single friend in real. So we shouldn't confuse that. Maybe, some people like to think, "Oh, I have so many friends," but in reality, they might not. So, but yeah, I mean, you give people a chance to see. I mean, it could take a long time, but if as long as they're not fighting you, I mean, I have many people as my friends from long time that are not submitters, or have a lifestyle that I will not agree with. And I don't I don't unfriend them even on Facebook. But there were people that I invited them to submission and they started attacking me and stuff, and I just unfriended them right away. I mean, not right away, but like, I mean, after I spoke with them, showed them some proofs, and they still continue to say, be belligerent. And so I would unfriend them, even on Facebook, because I don't want anything to do with such people. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Masha Allah, thank you. Yeah, and nowadays people are not the way. Life has become so selfish nowadays. People are not really friends. They all talk nice to each other, but in their heart, I mean, I've seen a lot of people in gatherings, and it appears on the top that they are friends and they're really caring, but they will say, "I will do this for you. I will do that for you," and they'll big promises and this and that. But when time comes, all excuses, excuses. I mean, friendship has just pretty much become a Facebook friendship, and even in the real life. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's Robert again. I just wanted to say that. I'm reading here in Surah 2 the categories of the three people, or the three categories of people. You got the righteous, you got the disbelievers, and the hypocrites. It's got to be that the hypocrites are the most dangerous, the most wily, the one that we need to be extremely concerned about. The disbelievers, they're straightforward. They just disbelieve, and we know where they're coming from. But the hypocrites, they get it,
Hypocrites.
and they corrupt it all. So, yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. I just wanted to add that comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, the God's pure religion is always corrupted by the hypocrites. They hurt the religion most. They hurt believers most, and this is God's system. God lets them be. They are like Satan representatives, and they hide from the people. Um, their hearts are not believing, but they will talk like they do, you know, and they spread confusion among the believers, doubt about God's revelations, and they always are troublemakers. They are the worst, because that's why God says they will be in the deepest hell, the deepest point of pit of hell, or something like that. Yeah, they gotta be the worst kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. If somebody just says, I disbelieve, like you suppose you invite someone to your community and you say, these are the rules in our community to live, and somebody just mark it off, no, I don't believe in these rules, so you reject this person to enter your community, and one person checks off, okay, yeah, I believe, I believe, I believe. But when this person moves into your community and you clearly see violating the rules and causing trouble, so obviously, that's why the hypocrites are the more bad people, because on the surface they say yes, but when they come into your community and they start causing all this trouble and destruction and all that, that's why I think explains also that why they're so bad.
I want to say they're like a cancer or a virus that spreads.
Yeah.
Yes, very much like that. God calls them, they're plagued. They're plagued with hypocrisy. God also gives the example of disease. It's like a disease, right? And it does spread from person to person. They just constantly create, because they are never certain, and they are actually, God says they're like, inside they hate the believers. So that's, they want to divide people. They want to confuse people from the right path, and try to deviate, so they can feel better. Yeah. They're anti-certainty. They don't want anybody to become certain because they never are. They're always back and forth, Uh, yeah, not good kind of people. God talks about them that they don't belong with you or with them. They're in between, you know. They waver all the time. So, all the characteristics God has described in the Quran about hypocrites, but most people are in denial to even say, oh, I don't know, so and so is a hypocrite or not, but God exposes them. And once they're exposed, there is no business for us to keep any kind of ties with them or be nice to them. God commands us not to be nice with them. But a lot of people think we need to be nice to everyone, whether they are deviating from the religion or making false um, innovations or doing damage to the religion. They still
Mm.
don't want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I also wanted to comment on verse 69 and 70 and 71. It talks about following the parents blindly. They found their parents astray and they followed in their footsteps. Most of the previous generations have strayed in the same manner. And so, like we see, circumcision, for example, is a classic example of that. There's people, they found their parents astray and they're following in their footsteps blindly. I mean, how blind is it, when they don't have any tangible evidence to back up their claims, but they're still following in their parents blindly. The parents did it to their children, mutilated them, and now these people become parents and they want to do the same to their children because some people will say that they want their children to look like them or whatnot, or so they just continue to do it. And many people who claim to follow the Quran and believe in the Quran are just turning a blind eye to the fact that this book is complete, perfect, and fully detailed, and they opt for these types of rituals that they just follow from their previous generations without proof. So,
Yeah, Masha Allah. Yeah, God does not enforce you to believe. We clearly see in the Quran that God gives us examples to convince us. It's not just like God could have just sent a small book and it's just saying, you must believe me, and this is it. No explanation. But when we read Quran, very clearly God is explaining right and left uh, with all the miracles, and especially now that we have miracle of 19 and rain cycle and so many things to ponder upon to convince our soul that this is the right path. This book, whatever it says, is absolutely correct, and I should, follow it with proof and evidence and everything you can possibly think. It's in this book, but you see clearly, people are following blindly their parents without any proof. I mean, people should even ponder upon, like, suppose the literature of hadith that from Bukhari has been, even if you can go down and Google it, the birth of Bukhari was like roughly 200 years past Prophet's death. And so how could somebody who born like 200 years after would be able, like, to write all this stuff? I mean, there's a lot of red flags to go past to believe what we've been told from our parents and past generations. So that's just completely, if you look at from a neutral point of view, just somebody who has no religion would even see and say, what are you doing? I mean, I'm not a religious person, but what you're doing is completely doesn't make any sense. I would rather believe the Quran. But same people, same people that they blindly follow their parents. It's crazy that when their parent tells you something else, like about this worldly life, oh, I think this is better for you, they disrespect their parents, they talk loud, they scream. Like the parents will tell you, I think your this friend is not good in school or this and that. I don't want you to even. Oh, mom and dad, you don't know anything. You know, your time has been gone. This is new life. This is 21st century. This and that. You don't know. Like they will disrespect to this like no limit. Like when it comes to religion, oh, I follow what my parents says. You know, this is the true reality. Mashallah, that's my point.
Hi, it's Robert. This circumcision really confuses me because I believe it crosses the line. I mean, when you say it's a religious rite and it's not even mentioned in the Quran, I think we strayed at that point. And it's shocking to me that this issue keeps coming up again and again and again in some of these Facebook pages that I will go to and engage with some of the submitters. But yeah, it's I think what Solomon says about this whole business with circumcision is spot on. But you know, it's not mentioned in the Quran, and I can't understand for the life of me how we could argue with anybody that when we can't even get a consensus that it's not even in the Quran. I'll end it there.
Mhm.
Yeah, not even once, not even a hint.
Mhm.
Actually goes against so many of other
So many
God's
commandments.
revelations in the Quran. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, God says He has placed no hardship. He was a father of submission, right? And he got what's the verse? Hold on, let me read the verse. It's in um, the one where God mentions no hardship, you know, and that's specifically related to Abraham. It says Abraham, Surah 22, verse 78. Abraham, the original messenger of Islam, says, "You shall strive for the cause of God as you should strive for his cause. He has chosen you and has placed no hardship on you in practicing your religion, the religion of your father Abraham. He's the one who named you submitters originally." And it continues. So, I mean, like just looking at this verse, I mean, this is the religion God calls the religion for Abraham, and says he has placed no hardship on you. And then when you look at the Bible, first of all, the Bible doesn't mention any of the practices that were actually given to Abraham, like Salat, Zakat, fasting, or Hajj, and only mentions circumcision. But at the same time, I mean, it gives you like the worst kind of hardship that any man can actually put himself through is supposedly given to Abraham, because he's told in the Bible at the age of 99 to perform his own circumcision without any sort of anesthetics or modern surgical tools or anything, and then do it to his whole tribe, his sons, his servants. And imagine like what sort of a bloody scene that would be if that were to take place. I mean, imagine if someone tells you to cut your finger. I mean, you couldn't even or do that, to sever. I mean, not just to cut it, but to sever like a big part of it, just to cut it out. And you couldn't do it to yourself. So imagine doing that to like such a sensitive organ in one's body to themselves. I mean, for men, I mean, imagine if somebody kicks you and how much it hurts, right? That's the place where, you can really hurt a person really easily, right? And then doing that to someone in that time and era. I mean, I can't even like I think somebody who actually went through you know uh pain where they had part of their body cut off would be able to imagine how much pain that would be, like if you had to go through surgery. But imagine if you were to someone was to perform this surgery without any sort of anesthetic. Now, I mean, people are traumatized. But imagine then, for them to do it to him, his family, everyone, then say, "Has God has placed no hardship on you in practicing your religion?" And people would laugh like, "Okay, you think this is not hardship?" I mean, God doesn't inflict pain. He doesn't make the religion difficult for us. I mean, there's so many verses. There's no compulsion in religion, and there's so many proofs, subhanAllah. And God says this book is complete, perfect, fully detailed. He has given us all the commandments. God sent a messenger. He explained everything, you know. So it really baffles me, and I'm sure everybody else here too, because like really, where did it come from? And we're not talking about a handful of people who are practicing it right now. I mean, the entire population of submitters, most of them, majority of them outside of this group that we're talking here, is actually following this practice now because it started from Masjid Tucson originally, and then everybody who became submitters after that adopted it, and a certain group in the Bay Area here took it even further to make it a requirement. Where first, when Masjid Tucson published it, it was more like, hey, this is like an extra credit thing that you can really, get closer to God and be like Abraham, which was even worse, I believe. I don't know which one is worse though, but I see they're both as bad because they're both attributing lies to God and promoting an innovation. But really, they're all doing that. And there's two sects among them, and one sect believes that it's a requirement, and another sect believes that it's not a requirement, but it's extra credit. Like, if you do it, it's really good. And that really mirrors the concept of circumcision in Shiism and Sunnism, right? Because the Sunnis believe the same way. They believe it's extra credit. It's a sunnah of Abraham. And a sunnah means that to them it's like, if you do it, it's good. It's not a requirement. And then you have the Shias. In the Shiism, they say it is a requirement. You have to do it. And that's what we see now among submitters. There's these two sects, and one believes it's not in the Quran, so it doesn't matter if you don't do it, but it's a right of Abraham, and then other people say it's a right of Abraham that must be followed. So the reason why we put emphasis on it and we keep bringing it up too is to let people know that this is not submission, because they're going out there promoting it, and there are hundreds of people that are doing it now, and there's going to be hundreds, thousands more in the next generations that are going to continue to practice that, right? So that's why I feel it is important to let people know that this is not a right of Abraham. This has no basis in the Quran. It's only in the Bible and Hadith books, which we know are corrupted. The Bible has many lies attributed to God as well. That's why God sent the Quran. And God sent the Quran so that we can confirm everything from the Quran. If it's not in the Quran, we disregard it. So people need to understand that. And I mean, of course, um, we can only give the information, and then it's up to the person whether they want to believe or not. But it's I feel it, there's so few of us that have this information right now, that are standing by this, that it's important that we send out a clear message to everyone that if they want to practice this religion, this religion does not encourage or mandate anybody to cut any part of their bodies. That's it.
This almost looks like a blood, some sort of blood sacrifice ritual, and there's no such thing. Um, God says God does not inflict any pain on people, like make anything like that a part of religion, which actually has taken many people's lives, many children's lives. There is there are numbers uh, that how many kids die due to complications of
Mhm.
circumcision every year. Um, and how could that be the first thing a child is born who hasn't even given a chance? I'm getting a feedback actually. Somebody's mic is. Okay, thanks.
That was mine.
Uh, that God has given 40 years of grace period for people to grow up, study, have children, and then find a path with their own free will. First of all, This child is not using any free will. They don't even know the meaning of God yet or anything like that. And while God says no compulsion in religion, so that contradicts right there. And then God, eh, quote unquote, in Genesis 17, God is ordering Abraham not, first of all, like Solomon has very nicely graphically explained it, and I got scared even listening to it, that cutting your own genital parts is horrific. And then imagine he's chasing his slaves and his
Chasing.
servants with the knife, and who might or might not be believers. And then he must, I mean, God is ordering him to do it to all of them. This does not sound like God's religion. It is very satanic. And yeah,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
just a disclaimer, so people don't get it wrong. That Bible, the master tablet, which is with God, does not have lies. People have added um, falsehood into the books and the paper. So today we don't have access to the pure Torah or Bible. We don't have. So what we have Quran, which confirms and supersedes the previous scriptures, and it's a proven word, and it has no falsehood anymore. So just to clarify that, don't get us wrong, that Bible, in the Bible which was sent by God, the word of God did not have any such nonsense, but the people altered it. Thank you.
Mashallah, I think one of the biggest proofs for them would be to see, if what does the Bible say about Abraham besides circumcision? I mean, what was his rights? It doesn't mention the salat or the zakat or fasting or hajj. They're all. It's you can clearly
Yeah,
see
that's
that
the huge point.
it's been distorted. Yeah, mashallah, and really, there's a clear verse in the Quran that shows that Satan will be the one that will do it. He says like, I will command them. This is in Surah 4, verse 119. It says, I will mislead them, I will entice them, I will command them to forbid the eating of certain meats by marking the ears of livestock, and I will command them to distort the creation of God. Anyone who accepts the devil as a Lord instead of God has incurred a profound loss. And then it says, he promises them and entices them. What the devil promises is no more than an illusion, right? That's the next verse right after that. So how will the devil promise or entice people or command people to do something? I mean, it's funny actually. Well, it's ironic that it says he promises them, because when another name for a promise is a covenant, right? And so when you put something in that's a covenant of circumcision or a promise of circumcision, that's really a form of devil's promise, where he's telling people to distort God's creation, and in
Mashallah.
return, they're going to be rewarded.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, it comes as a promise, exactly the covenant. My God, how people have made this connection of that part of the Bible to Quran.
Mhm.
But every God says, God inspires enemies of God to come up with fancy words and add um, things to religion, and that's how they did that. And so after Messenger of the Covenant, it eliminated any chance of Prophet Muhammad Hadith, right, or Sunnah. But people found still those who want to deviate. The
Mhm.
system is the same. People will be the same. They found a very ancient hadith still running and kicking, and they found that a source other than the Quran.
Yeah. I mean, the devil has many tricks in his bag, right? So he said he will come from the front and the back and left and right, he'll skulk for them on the straight path. And this is a clever example, a clever trick he came up with to trick these people. I mean, but the messenger of the covenant has been very clear, and the Quran has been very clear for people. So if they really followed what the messenger said and followed what the Quran said, they wouldn't have fallen for such a trap. Because in numerous places, he mentions, the messenger of the covenant mentions that, our criteria is the Quran. If it's not in the Quran, we don't accept it. We have no regard for it. We don't follow it. When he talks about the contact prayers, as rites of submission, he mentions the Quran because it's in the Quran. We do the contact prayers. So and he talks about the Bible, how the Quran confirms the Bible, how, if Quran says one thing, Bible says another thing, you follow the Quran and you know it's the truth. So many proofs, they're there. But of course, devil will come with these kind of tricks. But the thing is, who will fall for these tricks? People who fall for these tricks will be the ones whose hearts are not convinced that, God will resurrect us and there will be the hereafter. Those are the people that will fall for these fancy words, as we know, with same with hadith and sunnah, right? They're fancy words and they fall for them, and it exposes their disbelief, exposes their hypocrisy in their hearts.
Yeah, the cycle is just repeating, because this is what we did in the past life. We didn't put a full trust in God, that God is capable of everything, and we listen to Satan, and look where we are. And the cycle is just repeating itself, the history.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then about
exactly. And
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And that's about the circumcision. It's pretty sad that you're talking about that. Uh, God does not just want us to, like, when you eat food, the main purpose of the food is to give us nutrition and energy and stuff. But at the same time, God has made food in so many different varieties and spices and taste, and you enjoy food. It's not like just filling up your belly. It's just the taste, because our tongue has different taste sectors. Like you're a sweet and sour, spice, different bitterness. There, you touch sugar in a wrong spot, like take a little spot of like a little piece of sugar, and it will only pick up at a certain spot where you'll feel the taste of the sugar. So similarly with the circumcision, it's the main purpose. It's not just to for the next offsprings, like the children. So God wants you to enjoy that process, and not only during, other times too, but and we can clearly see that there are the nerve endings are in that part, and when you cut off the sensors of those nerve endings, all you have is just like it's like a machine with the sensors all around it, and there are wires that connect to the CPU. But if you connect the sensors, all you have left is the wires, and they cannot pick up any signal. And when you cut that part off, you lose most of the pleasure. And if in the similar way, if you cut somebody's tongue off, part of the tongue, now this person, when he grows up, and right now this infant is just drinking milk, but when the child reaches to the 10-year-old or something, and when they start eating different food with different taste, now they cannot taste it. All, maybe the part of the tongue that is left is just maybe salt, and all they're gonna taste is salt for the rest of their life. They will never know how it tastes to be sugar or sour or chocolate or anything else. And similarly, these people that when they do that, this person will lose the taste of so many different varieties that could have, they don't even know. Because one
Mhm.
person who medically who has to go through this process because there were some complications in his middle age, and they had to do it because he was just infected or something. This person describes it himself that he lost so much feelings after this,
Mhm.
and this was, he said he would never ever do it, but his condition was, he had a cancer or something that he had to go through. But he said, you have no idea what you have lost. So that's my comment.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and many, it's like, imagine if you just tell people that, God has placed no hardship and you're practicing your religion. But yeah, I mean, this is one procedure you have to do, cut a part of your child's body and he could die potentially, and yeah, but it's still no hardship. It's just laughable. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
I
God we
mean, people.
Thank God we got the Quran that keeps us on the straight path, and that we can know that if it's not mentioned in the Quran, we don't really have to deal with it, like the messenger said.
Yeah, and not that we don't have to do it. I mean, we shouldn't do it because, God says, He created us in the perfect design. He's the best designer. He perfected our creation. And so then there's a lot of people that will use this scientific excuse, contrary to what Adam just mentioned, that it's bad for you, medically speaking. A lot of people will do it and say it's good for you because it's more cleaner. But I mean, what they're really saying is God did not know like what's clean and what's not clean, so He gave you something that's problematic. And I read this article. This one hypocrite, he posted it a while back, and he kept promoting it, and people were liking it, and it's very eloquent and stuff. And I don't want to even give him that credit, but people tend to see him as very eloquent, I would say. And all he was saying in his long article was that we should do it because God says that God loves those who are clean, and then describes all the ways and how it's clean. And then I mentioned, I posted, I'm like, well, okay, well, if God says that God loves those who are clean, why don't you just clean it instead of cutting it off? And then the moderator deleted the entire post altogether. But really, the idea is, for those who are saying that it's hygienic for you, well, you just have to be clean. You can't like you can't just remove off your nails from your fingers just because they might gather dust or dirt under your nails, right? So you cut them, you keep them clean, and you do the same for any part of your body. You have to be clean. God says He loves those who are clean, so you just keep yourself clean. I mean, that's a simple terms that we can put it. And so we can see people who are clean will not have these kind of problems. And we see a lot of countries in the world, I mean, they don't do it, and their lives are normal. But it's mostly in the US, I mean, it's even worse with the medical side of it, because there's a lot of other monetary benefit for hospitals as well. They sell the foreskin of the babies for thousands of dollars, and to these companies that sell them for beauty products and stuff, and which is horrible uh, also. But I think the worst part of it is from the religious standpoint, where you're attributing a lie to God. God says, who are more evil than those who fabricate lies and attribute them to God, or who attribute false innovations attributed to God. I mean, these are people that are the most evil people, God says, on earth. And coming back to befriending people like that, I mean, we still have people that are befriending such people. So I mean, that is not good either.
Yeah, just like your teeth, you need to clean them, but they're an important purpose to eat and stuff. And somebody say, "Oh, it'll give you gum disease, it'll give you tooth decay, pain, suffering." Why don't we just remove all your teeth? God
Yeah,
has given, God has given you two
that's a good
hands with
example.
5 fingers to do just about anything. How long it takes to clean? If you go to the bathroom, you clean yourself. You take a shower. We spend cleaning ourselves maybe an hour a day at least, shower and everything together. So how much that will take? Just clean it up.
Mhm.
Masha Allah.
Yeah.
Just mashallah, just another comment about this verse number 62. Before I talk about that, there is a movie in Netflix called The Platform, and I was just surfing and I just started watching it. It gives you just a gruesome picture of in a situation if you're caught in that situation, and you will have like it's a so fearful situation where the food comes to you and you have only a few seconds. It's just very very. So what happens is when something that pushes you to the limit, then you can, and then you are like, you take any decision, you're ready to just, you in normal circumstances, you would not even think about something, but some situation can push you to the limit where you will do unthinkable things. Like you are so thirsty, you know, people will drink their own urine. If you get even worse, you will drink out of sewage if it get to that point. And this is where God is telling us in verse 62. It's actually starts from is this a bitter destiny or the tree of bitterness? And so God said, where they'll eat from it and drink with hellish drinks. And then God is telling us a picture that they will return to hell. So this situation, God is putting in such a picture that if you can just imagine the whole thing, it's just like a movie, make a movie in your head. The heart of the hell, you know, when you describe heart of something, like, you know, if there's a community, is it like a city, and then you say heart of the city is just beautiful. Like this place has big houses and parks and everything. This is the most expensive area. So when we use this word heart of something, that's either the best part of it or the worst part of it. It depends where you're talking. If you're talking about gangs, and so you say the heart of the gang is in this area. So in here, it's a negative situation. So the heart of the hell, this will be the worst place, it appears to be. And people are in hell, right? So they don't have access to this tree. So they will be brought, or they will come to this area. Don't want to come to this area because this probably be the worst. So, but they get so much pushed to the limit where they're so hungry. Have you ever do hiking or went somewhere where like you have no food, and you can start eating leaves or something that you just to fill your belly. When you push limits, I mean, I have even seen people, they are suffering in so much pain. They're begging their doctors, please take my life. I've seen it myself, that they're so much in pain. So sometimes situations push you to this limit where you cannot control yourself, and you do whatever it takes. So these people, and imagine in this world when we do fasting, we get hungry, and when we break our fast, we're ready for that maghrib, and then time comes and we want to eat. But that sense of that hungerness, just imagine in the hell, God can intensify that. I mean, in this world, we can probably stay hungry and can ignore the hungerness. But in hell, imagine God can increase that sensitivity of your hungerness to the point they will run towards that tree. It is so much bothering these people that they will eat the fruit of the tree of bitterness, which shapes like devil, which will even remind them, this is what you used to do. Why God mentioned his comparison with the devil's head is because this is what you used to follow. Go ahead, eat them now. This is what you deserve. And they are so hungry, they will gulp it down in their mouth. And then another place God talks about the drink of hell is the putrid water. That is, if you look at the dictionary, is this a bad taste, rotten water, all this kind of example is giving. Sorry. You would not even want to walk in that water. I mean, you don't even want to go close to that water. The smell is so bad, and let alone walking through it. These people will be like so thirsty that they will drink it. You know, just imagine the picture in your head. And then God says, then they will return back to the hell. Now, if you can continue your movie in your head, now these people they were like hungry, they're just eating, and then they want to put something in mouth. If you watch the movie platform, it will tell you that the next round of food they don't know when it's gonna come. That right now they want to fill it up so that they don't feel hungry, and when they will brought back to hell, their punishment doesn't stop. After eating part it itself is just horrible. That imagine when you go back to hell, then the cycle starts all over again. And when the next round of feeding comes, and then they will come back, they don't know when they will be, how long they will have to suffer. I mean, what a picture that God is putting. If you just watch the movie platform and then imagine being yourself in there, it will just give you goosebumps. I'm like, oh my God, why are these people here? And God is telling us this gruesome picture. God is not shy away from telling you the reality. If you have a good friend who smokes, who doesn't take care of their life, and You are trying to be nice. Oh, you don't want to hurt this person's feeling that, oh, you're smoking, they're going to give you cancer, or your lifestyle. But God does not shy away to tell you exactly what you're doing and what you're going to end. I mean, that's why, when a good friend will tell you your bad habits. A bad friend will hide your bad habits. So if somebody comes and tells you your bad habits, this must be a good friend. And if somebody's telling you hell, heaven, God alone, and all that, you should even listen, because with the proof and everything. So, but God is giving us such a clear picture. We should take heed and be very, like not even in our mind to think that, oh, God forbid I can end up. So that's why God says in these verses that absolute devotion, those who absolutely devote themselves to God alone, will be the savers. So no matter what happens, you want to be in that. God gives you some free will, and in that free will, you have a choice. You can be sincere to whomever you want. That's your free will. You want to sincere to God, or you want to sincere to someone else, and the choice is ours. And we can, mashallah, easily look at ourselves and examine ourselves. Where do we stand? Mashallah, that's my point. Sorry to come.
So, yeah, these descriptions of hell are frightening, to say the least. But, it's interesting because these events that are described in the Quran in terms of these hell, these are events that already have happened in our future. We haven't been there yet, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There's this feeding in hell, and that puzzles me because, uh, like you say, the pain of not eating it must be so great that they have to eat that. And then when they eat it, it also describes how it'll rip and tear their insides up. And so, can you imagine that? And then, can you imagine being extremely thirsty? I think we've all maybe at one time or another been outside and been really thirsty. But to try and alleviate that thirst with sand or boiling acid, it's very frightening to think about. I thank the brother for bringing this up. It's giving me goosebumps right now thinking about it, but I need that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like also reminds me of, people who are like drug addicts, like people who are on meth or other things, for example, they might be losing all their teeth. Also, they know, and they'll continue to take it until they're dead, so. But the thing is, in the hereafter, I mean, these people are not going to die, and they'll continue to suffer from pain over and over. I mean, and this is not obviously, if this was the only torment and hell they had to go through was the terrible food, I think that would be enough. But you have that, and then you have so many other things. You have people that are gonna burn, and their skins are gonna be restored after, so they can continue to suffer the burns, and so many other things. Constant argument and fighting and blaming, and the remorse and the exile from God on top of everything else. There's just, I mean, you know yeah, really, it's so terrible. And the reason why God is explaining all of these things to us is that, we, if God forbid any of us ends up in hell, that, we don't say on the day of judgment that, we didn't know how terrible it was, because God tells us exactly through allegories how terrible it is. But I mean, God also, every time God describes hell, I mean, he also describes heaven. I mean, this is why, and then God says, is it better destiny, where, God calls it the greatest triumph, just barely missing hell. I mean, these people are going to be in bliss. It's going to be better, obviously, than even it's not going to be first class like the high heaven, the lower heaven. I mean, it's not going to be like the high heaven, but it will still be very beautiful, indescribably beautiful. I mean, God says we cannot imagine how beautiful it will be, and all the blessings that we're going to have in in paradise. So um, also I think the footnote, did we read the footnote for 3755? Uh, Probably not, I would think. Okay, so maybe I can read the footnote. Or Huda, would you like to read the footnote? Are you there? Okay. Okay, I'll read it. No, no worries. It says, people who make it to heaven will be able to visit their relatives and friends in hell without adverse consequences. In the hereafter, anyone can move downward, but not upward beyond a certain limit. The limit is decided by one's degree of growth and development. See Appendix 5. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I wanted to share.
So I don't mean to dwell on the negative, but recently, I've always puzzled about this business of the iron pots. I thought, what in
Yeah.
the world? I mean, I thought to myself, like, what in the world's going to happen when I go in there? But I think what's going to happen is we're going to get boiled. We're going to get cooked in that thing. I mean, so there's all of these descriptions in hell that are just so incredibly frightening to me. But I'm glad you also brought out the comparing and the contrasting, because you'll always find that. You'll find these horrible descriptions of hell, and then it'll contrast it beautifully with these descriptions of people in paradise. And it's like, my gosh, I want to definitely be in the side of the paradise. But that's all I had to comment. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, Masha Allah.
Sorry.
In like in the 80s, when you used to read these verses that the people can look at his friend in hell. And at that time, even the technology was still developing. And then I would used to think that how can they see their friends? How are they going to search all these out of these billions of people? Where is my friend? Where is he located? And mashallah, God shows you all this right before your eyes. Like now the technology that if you want to search your friend, you can just go on and search your friend. Where is he? Or something, if everything they've been posting. So God shows you that, look, you can do it on earth. What about in God's system? It will be far more superior to even locate anyone at any point, at any time, and possibly travel there. Like on earth, people can travel. There's this one with the knowledge, you can just blink of an eye, can move a castle, and you can imagine God's kingdom. The powers will be given to the people. Will be like, you can travel in a second to the hell and look at your friend and search for him. Mashallah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like, we're still kind of like we are here on Earth. We're curious. We're wondering what did happen to that friend that invited me to go this way and not that, or that I warned. Where is that person? And then you'll be able to see that the consequences of his actions. But like for me, I'm curious about some of my relatives. I'd kind of like to go down there and, well, if I can't find them in paradise, I'm always assuming a lot here, but yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment on the verses about the friend, visiting the other friend. It's like it always, this is the reason this person's in the heart of hell is because, I mean, this person that it mentions here, I mean, one may look at this verse and said this person, well, has to be an atheist because, or something, because he says, after we die and turn to dust and bones, do we get called to account, But no, I mean, these could be people who say they're submitters, or who say they're believers, or who say they're Christians or whatever, right? Where they do believe with lip service that there is the hereafter, right? But in their hearts is really, their conviction is not there. They're not certain in their hearts that they will be resurrected, and so these people will end up in hell. And that's why this is the statement that they actually believed when they were alive, and which is why they were not guided. And I mean, this person is in the heart of hell, right? So this means like this person is probably like in the lowest pit of hell, in the lowest pit of hell. We know is for the hypocrites, they will go to the lowest pit of hell, right? So that shows that this, most likely these people will be people that did believe in the hereafter, seemingly, so I think we all have to really dig deep into our hearts and find out if we 100% certain that we are going to be resurrected and we're going to have to be held accountable, or is it just like something we're saying uh, by lip service? We have to be 100% certain. If you're doing righteous works just because you think in case there's God and in case there's a hereafter, you're not going to make it. The only people who are going to make it are those who are certain that there is hereafter. You have to be certain about God's revelation. You have to be certain about the hereafter. Being certain about the hereafter is one of the three basic requirements of entering paradise, right? So, I mean, when God says, those who believe, those who are Jewish, the Christians and converts, anyone who believes in God believes in the last day and leads a righteous life. So, has nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. So believing in the hereafter, when it talks about believing, it's not talking about lip service. It's talking about believing with certainty that this is going to happen. You know,
So I'll often talk to people and, I'll tell them that we have eternal life. They can't grasp that. And, I tell them we all have eternal life. It's just a matter of where we spend it, heaven or hell. You need to make sure and do everything you can now so that you don't end up in hell. And if you're curious about hell, we've got actionable intelligence in the form of the Quran, and it will actually transport us there in our minds and kind of give us a vantage point of an event that's already happened in our future. It's really mind-boggling the way the Quran is set up and how it will take us, transport us into the future like that, where we're actually standing there almost and witnessing this in our mind's eye. Very fascinating.
it's good.
Yeah, Michelle, just like you were saying, brother, that the curiosity that what happened to my friend in this life, we had like suppose you have a good friend submitter and just the way just leaves you or someone, I had one friend submitter and then this person left and I was so curious. I wanted to know what happened, what caused him to move out. I tried reaching this person so many ways, but this person just didn't want to talk to me. But you have curiosity. What happened? So imagine in the heaven to, or like you earlier mentioning that people have curiosity. Where's my friend and this person? And you will go and see this person's situation. And it also serves a very important purpose. So when you see all these things, suppose you have a friend who lives in a very, very tough part of the world where there's poor, hunger and war and all that, and you happens to go there and you look around and you can't even stay there for, you said the safety issue, the food is bad and you want to come back to your home. When you look people in that suffering and when you come back, when you enter your home and you just start appreciating God for the blessings that you have, and those people are suffering. So I would imagine people similarly when they return to their heaven, they will probably glorify God even more. That thank you God that your blessing that you saved me and I am here. They will even appreciate and praise God even more, and because when you have something to compare, that's when you see what you have or what you don't have. How they say you don't appreciate things until you lose them. So that's comparison is so critical that you can compare yourself to people in hell and where you are, Masha Allah. Thank you. So where did the sister Huda stop?
I think we stopped at verse 89. Was it? No, 82.
Okay, Masha, thanks.
Yeah, so God willing, do you guys have any more comments or questions? If not, maybe we could stop the live stream, God willing. And what do you guys think?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay, Masha.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So for those who join us on YouTube as well, thank you for joining us. And God willing, our next study is going to be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, God willing. And our teacher is going to be Adam.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Salāmun Alaykum.
Assalamu alaikum.
So when you